So I'm here at CoinFest UK today, and I'm joined by Dr. Dominik Thor from IPChain Database. So tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about IPChain Database.
Well, my personal background is I used to be in banking back in the day, and at some point I decided, well, that's not really what I want to do, and I co-founded a small biotech company. And that actually led to us coming up with the idea for IPChain, because obviously if you work together with a number of leading universities, research departments and institutions, and you come up with intellectual property, well, in the form of new inventions, of new molecules, of new drugs and substances, then you have something that you really want to keep safe. And that was the point in time when we said, well, we think that blockchain technology can really help with that. And probably there is a group out there who already uses this use case, this scenario where you use blockchain to really show that you are the first one to do something. And we reached out to a number of players, and we didn't identify anybody who was doing that so far, even though it was such an obvious use case, right? If you take a look from blockchain perspective, it's really easy to come up with something like a timestamp where you can prove that you did something prior to anyone else. And that, legally speaking, has been a huge problem in the past for inventors, for creators of art, of music, of videos, of text, of researchers. They have to prove that they did it first. That's like the basis for their rights. And that has been difficult because you may have witnesses, but the other side could have them as well in legal proceedings. Your own notes are not going to be enough. Nobody will believe you that you actually wrote it down a month before anybody else. And the same applies to web pages where you can go back and change them. They're not immutable, so it's different than blockchain. So blockchain is a huge thing here, and we figured, well, everybody has to be aware of that in the field of intellectual property. And nobody was. And we reached out to WIPO, which is a United Nations agency, the World Intellectual Property Organization. That's the highest authority there is. They write all the regulations for all the patent offices worldwide. And we got in touch with them, figuring, okay, you guys, you're probably aware of that. And they said, yes, you're right. We think that blockchain has a huge potential to make an impact on the whole field, this multi-billion-dollar industry, but we are not a service provider. So I said, okay, what we're supposed to do? And they said, yeah, you know what? That was the vice president there, Mr. Yo Takagi, real up-high letter and a great person, and he came up with lots of good ideas. And he said, well, why don't you do it? And we're going to support you. And right now, that's how we came up with IPChain. And we have now 2 of the former directors on board as advisors, and they are a great help to us.
So what sorts of companies would be interested in using IPChain Database?
Yeah, when it comes to users, I think we will have a very broad range of users. So obviously those companies that produce a number of R&D projects themselves, so that could be the Googles, Siemens, IBMs of this world, but also medium-sized companies that maybe don't have the resources to have a huge IP department. And that's where we come in, because we make things less costly, faster, easier. But it doesn't only relate to companies. So the same could be said for a research department at universities, where you have lots of different people creating intellectual property, doing research, different types of professors, and that all needs to be protected, that all needs to be administrated by somebody. And then there comes, I think, probably the largest use case group, those users, people like you and me that create IP, sometimes without them really knowing that they should protect it. So you make photos, you code a web page, you're maybe a game developer, you write music or text or blog entries. All that is something that you automatically own the rights to, right? That's a copyright. Yeah. You get it instantly. But the problem is you have to prove that it's yours. And in a digital world that's getting smaller, where things can be exchanged so quickly, how can you go back and say, well, actually, it was me doing that, and that's thanks to IPChain Database that will be possible.
Great. What technology are you using? Is it going to be deployed on your own blockchain, or are you going to use Ethereum?
That's a good question. We were thinking about that very much in the beginning, and then we said we need to have an open architecture, because basically what we are trying to do here should be independent of any public blockchain, and so that means our architecture allows us to run on any public blockchain that's suitable. For now, we are using Ethereum for a number of reasons, the number of nodes available to it, and so on and so forth. We think that's good argument that it's a very secure network, but in the future, I think we will have to ability to switch over to any other suitable blockchain, or give users the ability to pick the one they like best.
How would you make it like interoperable between blockchains?
So when it comes to the basic architecture, the way we designed this whole system is that we don't store the data of the actual intellectual property on the blockchain. The reason is simple, it's size. So it's not so much of a problem if you just have an invention, sorry for saying just, but it's mostly described in pure text. So text doesn't need a lot of storage. But if you're talking about 3D designs, about maybe huge codes or music or videos or something like that, then you have to have a filing system, right, where you can store all that data without taking an impact on I would say, the whole blockchain itself. So we said, okay, we use IPFS, Internet Planetary File System, to store the data. And essentially, that's also great because it allows us to have something that's scalable, that's more or less free of cost, and we just store the hash onto the blockchain. So we link to the IPFS file. So people will have, in the end result, right, as proof, they will have the hash and the Etherscan address, if we're talking about Ethereum blockchain now, and the link to the IPFS file where the data is located. And that is going to be a real nice proof in front of court or in legal proceedings, or when talking to maybe patent offices. Because if you're an inventor, if you publish something, in some countries you lose all the rights to filing a patent later on. But there are countries like the US, like Canada, like Japan, so many around actually, where you have a grace period. So that means it makes sense for you to get protection, right, by doing a defensive publication. And then you still maintain the right to file a patent later on. So that could be something that you do in between the original idea, and then you retain the possibility to get investors on board and file a patent, which costs you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And I think that is also a very good aspect of the project, that, as I said, patents cost you a fortune. And if you are a company and you have filed patents around the world, and then you make incremental changes to the design, that could mean that another competitor could come around and say, well, we filed a patent on these changes, thus rendering your original patent less worthless. And what can you do? You can file your own patents again spending maybe £1 million for that worldwide, or you do a defensive publication, and then you intend that nobody, not even yourself, is able to file a patent. Well, that's great, because then your original patent retains its worth. And that is being done around the world millions of times per year by universities, by companies, and usually they use prior art databases for that. So that could be done by publishing in a magazine, but that takes a lot of time, and there are risks associated with things taking a lot of time in the sector. So they do it with these platforms. And the problem is these platforms, they're server run. So if the server goes down, poof, there goes your security, right? So what we have here is something that's, I would say, not linked to us, I mean, we are a startup. We had many big companies coming up to us and saying, well, okay, that's exactly what we need. But guys, I mean, you're a young company. What happens if you go out of business? And what I can usually tell them is, you know what? Of course, there are more established businesses, bigger businesses out there who focus on this aspect of what IPChain does. We do a lot of other things. But, something could happen to their servers or to the company itself, and then it's gone. Whereas the data that is stored on the blockchain, that is going to stay there like forever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge competitive advantage, and one of the reasons why blockchain is so perfectly tailored for this use case of protecting intellectual property.
So how has it been developing the UI for this system?
Actually, that has been one of the core things that we really wanted to focus on in the beginning. We have great support there, a great team, people just focusing on the UI, because the interface is going to be used by lots of different stakeholders, I would call them. So first of all, there are the private users, right? So the artist, the coder, the web developer, whoever wants to protect what he created. Then there are maybe corporate users, right? They have other requirements, like you have a corporate environment with an IP department ahead of that. Then you have the different people contributing these different types of intellectual property. Same could be said for a scientific setting, an academic environment, where you have the head of the department and the different professors doing things, and well, they contribute that, but they shouldn't be allowed, on their own to hand it out, hand it over, send it, sell it, whatever things that we can provide with our platform. So we have had to create a user interface that's very intuitive, but at the same time offers all these different possibilities for users. Make it simple, but also very holistic. That's what we try to do, and I'm very happy that we will be able to release a video on that pretty soon, where we can have people, take a look exactly how these, I would say, user journeys look like.
Great. You're currently in the first stage for your ICO. How's that going, and when do you plan on the main stage of the ICO?
Well, we entered the pre-sale stage 2 weeks back. We are pretty happy with that so far. Before that, we had a private sale to some institutional investors that allowed us, to progress to that stage. As you know, development costs, they are high, and we want to be, really, others release a first version that is not so good. I don't think we can afford to do that. We are working together with a number of supranational and national organizations, big players in this field, as well as we're talking to a number of big development companies. I'm not dropping names here because we haven't signed these agreements so far, but well, I can't afford to put something out that's not good. So thankfully, we've had a lot of support there. We're looking forward to doing our main token sale, which is going to start end of May. And it's going to run, well, as long as we are not sold out. We try to be also very realistic about our goal, right? There are ICOs out there who want to raise hundreds of millions. We are a software development company. That's not cheap, but on the other hand, it has to have a size limit where people understand, okay, what do they need it for? And we need it for development, and we need it to create all these interfaces for all the patent offices out there. So we're working together with all of them within this PCT treaty, so that's 167 or so, which we will offer direct access to our data so they can actually use it. And I think that's another group of users that I forgot before. All those patent offices having to do prior art research, they will be using IPChain Database, and they will have the possibility to do so web-based, or they can use our interface. So I think I'm very excited going forward from now. And of course, market environment is not great at the moment, but on the other hand, I think those projects will do well, where people have the impression, okay, they will outgrow the market and outperform, the other possibilities to invest. And we got something here that, has actual use, whereas many other projects out there, which again are very impressive in what they are trying to achieve, but it's very hard because they have to create a niche market for them, and we are targeting a multi-billion dollar industry here, where they have actual need for services such as ours.
Definitely, you already have the blessing of quite a few different big companies in the space, and you've already developed quite a few partnerships.
Yeah, we are very, very grateful for those. Actually, I have to be real honest with you. In many cases, it was them reaching out to us rather than the other way around, because we focused, of course, on the crypto community in the beginning. But these people, they are aware of the potential of the blockchain. It's just that they, just as we did in the beginning, they don't find a real partner that could help them understand it and use it to the full effect. And so thankfully, yes, we get a lot of support. And actually nowadays, it's much easier for us talking to them than to investors in the crypto scene, because IP sounds so, very abstract, which it isn't. It's something that all of us almost create on a daily basis. And I think you have to really protect that in order to be able to monetize that. And without the ability to monetize it, our whole world, our industry, everything is built on that. And as we know, world is getting smaller. It's not those countries that have, the most natural resources or the cheapest workforce available to them that are richest. Actually, it's those that have the best ideas, and we need to protect these ideas. And that's what IPChain Database is all about.
So are there any additional services that the platform can offer?
Yeah, thank you for asking this, because what we always said, well, blockchain is nothing static. It's not just us or the user uploading information and that's that. We can do much more than that. So we can add more information to it, having timestamps attached, and that gives us the opportunity to allow people to safely exchange information. I think that's very, very important here, because I would say the huge majority of intellectual property is not protected by patents or copyrights. That's just confidential information important to a company. I always like to cite the example of the Coca-Cola formula. I mean, it's just sugar and water, but nobody knows about it and it's worth billions. And the company has to make sure that it stays this way. So how to provide this information to other players that you need, co-workers, other researchers, producers? Well, the easy question is, or the easy solution there, sorry, is that you say, well, we make a contract and these people are not allowed to disclose it. So that's a non-disclosure agreement. And we put that onto the blockchain. So again, you store information on IPChain Database. You can keep it there in a secure digital vault. And then you can do many things with it. One would be to publish it like before to get the protection. But you can also simply send out a link and have your partner access that link after signing a non-disclosure agreement online. And that is put onto the blockchain. So you can prove, okay, that party only got access after accepting our terms. After signing this document, you have timestamps for all this, and you can be sure that they cannot, take it away from you and claim that it's theirs, or use it in any other way without you being able to prove, okay, they didn't have the rights to that.
Nice. That's a really cool feature.
I think it's a real simple one.
Yeah,
that's the nice thing. There are so many projects out there. I mean, I really respect them, because many of these blockchain projects have great minds behind them, and they come up with very complex use cases. Well, I couldn't do that. I said, well, okay, I need a simple solution here, and I would have been happy just to be a customer of such a service, but nobody did it. And then I said, well, then we have to do it. And it's like the simplest use case you can have for blockchain technology. I mean, it's great to use it, for financial purposes, replacing banking systems. I've heard many great ideas out there, and I've been to many conferences lately. But in the end, I mean, in our case, it's simple as that. You have a legal system in place, and we try very much to work with all the leading authorities there. We are not replacing it. I don't think it's necessary. It's a working system. It's actually pretty impressive that it works worldwide, how to protect these things. All the different authorities work together. And if you can help them, make it faster, more secure, less complex, less costly for the users, everybody will be happy. And that is why we are supported by many players in this field. So that relates to the patent offices themselves, the different authorities such as WIPO, which I mentioned before, the United Nations agency, but also leading professionals here, like Dennemeyer Group, which is an official partner of ours and is the largest IP law firm worldwide, active on 5 continents, and don't ask me how many different practices they have. So actually really nice whenever we go and talk to somebody with an IP background. There are doors opening for us very widely and quickly.
Great. And when do you think you'll have a beta version of the product ready?
We are going to release a demo in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Right. For us, it's really important to make this a little bit better understood and I would say less abstract for people, so they really understand how this works, how can I upload information onto the blockchain, how can I see proof of that. And we will release a number of screens and videos on how the complete version will look like, what it can do, what it will offer to users, to the different kinds of users, companies, researchers, artists, private people, really. And we are going to release that final version, I hope, end of 3rd quarter this year.
Great. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.